Oh my gosh.
Hey guys, welcome to another week of the Unnamed Cybersecurity Podcast. I got Chris here, Matt here, Carl, and got a little echo from somebody, probably Carl again. I don't know. Anyway, Carl, I know that
Yes.
I know that you've been following this CDK car dealership thing that's been going on, and
A lot of
I saw that one of the dealerships that I was watching actually brought people in over the weekend because they got back up and running. So
well, first of all, that's good that they got back up and running, and hopefully they remain that way. It's been a real mess out there as far as what's been going on there. I mean, for those who haven't been following this, and I'm surprised, I bring this up everywhere I go, and it's still not completely in the mainstream. CDK, for those that don't know, is a back end software for car dealerships to run their whole systems. So car dealerships subscribe to the service, and what they get for that is they can run their inventory management for their shops and all their tickets in their shops and everything that's there. Then you move over to your HR, your payroll, that's all managed there. Then you get into your car dealer. Then you get into the actual dealership itself, which would include purchasing vehicles to have on the floor, running credit for all of these for all the people that you're purchasing for. So that's the program. It's really nifty, and then they also offer a CRM solution for the dealers so that they can go ahead and since they're getting all this information, figure out who are the most valuable customers that they have. They can grade those people because they want to know who they can sell cars to quickly and effectively. And so they sell their services nationwide to about 15,000 car dealerships. As Chris has explained before in the past, to sign up for that program, you have to allow them into your network with a persistent VPN and give them admin rights to the system. Sounds great. Still, dun dun dun, they get hacked and breached at a massive level. Both data centers, East Coast, West Coast, and now we have all this, and they've been able to infect all of these dealerships. So CDK as a service is finally going to get back up. They're saying hopefully July 3rd, and I wish them well on that. We are looking at it's an Armageddon. It's really, there's no other word for it. Major dealership groups are mentioning that they have lost about 10% so far that they're estimating for their yearly gross for the year. So for car dealerships, based on what CNN's given us and everything, it's somewhere easily between $50 to $100 billion of loss. Not to also to include, and the numbers just get staggering here. As we went through the numbers at a dealership, you're probably talking about 400 to 450 million records that have been exposed to this group that's called the Chris. What was the name of it? They're Conti, the new name.
Black Suit.
Yeah. So it's the same group that's been around forever. Very sophisticated nation state operator. And what we're looking at now is, let's look at we've been talking about this big area. There are guys and gals who are working in these dealerships, don't even know if they're getting a paycheck. That's been some of the stories. I can understand. A lot of these guys work. These are the people who work their tails off, and they work paycheck to paycheck, and these dealerships are not making payroll. Some of the dealerships have started to come back online, and now the guys are working weekends, and they're going to be working through the July 4th weekend. Needless to say, there's a lot of expenses coming through here. We're not even talking about the damage that's happened to the clients, but it's massive. We were talking in the green room. I would be shocked if we're not seeing a federal investigation into this. This might be this could easily be the biggest cyber hack to exploit that affects. We've had some good ones though. We've had some doozies, but this is up there.
Well, the challenge though is they're private.
Yeah, but there's a lot of public companies.
Right, but they're private. I think
Yes.
the owner is public. I believe the group that owns them is public, so that might be what it turns into. But the dealers, obviously, with their SEC 8Ks, the ones that are public are going to have to report it. It's going to be interesting for sure.
We already got 2 lawsuits that are out there, and it depends. I'm sure there's going to be a massive amount more that are coming down the pike.
Yeah,
as far as whether they're class actions or individual cases.
They should be combined into a class action lawsuit, I would assume. They'll probably just combine them all, but
then the lawyers make all the money.
Yeah.
Well, and if we take this a little bit step further, and I've been saying this for a few months now, just like the consolidation of things is like terrifying, and it's really bad, and it's stuff that needs to be handled. Let's break down the U.S. auto dealer software percentage, right? CDK owns 50% of the market. Reynolds and Reynolds has 20% of the market, and the other is just 30%. So other is just like small niche things that people don't understand.
Like the softball.
Yeah. So of course the Wall Street Journal comes out with this article entitled "CDK Global Hack Shows Risk of One Software Vendor Dominating an Industry." No shit. I've been saying this forever, and we're in the green room. We were talking about like medical. Like Epic owns like the EMR or the electronic medical record space. Like they own like something like 37.7% of all EMR. And then Oracle owns Cerner, which is 21.7%. And Meditech is a distant third with 13.2%. And then the 27.4 that exists outside of that is just a bunch of random stuff. So you have two players dominating 59.4% of the market.
Yep.
If one of them gets hit, think about the catastrophic nature of the medical system. Like we already saw this with Change Healthcare. They had 44% of the market. And look at the fallout from that. The more if we look at our business, if you're running your business and you're relying on one piece of software to run your business, that is a significant risk. And unfortunately, these dealers are finding that out.
Painfully. There are some dealers that had some flexibility that have been actually thriving in this market. Because if you can imagine being able to sell vehicles when everybody else can't.
Well, yeah, 20% of the market.
Quite the market advantage.
Oh, you want to go to banking? I got the stats for banking too. This is epic. Not like the EMR, but amusing to me. Fiserv owns 42% of the U.S. banking core technology.
Fiserv?
Jack Henry is 21%. So if Fiserv were to be compromised as a supply chain attack, that would affect 42% of our banks.
That sounds like a bad day.
Nothing to worry about here, guys. Nothing to worry about. But yeah.
So take everything crypto and really drop things in. Don't need it, right?
Do you want to go better? We can go into airline global distribution systems. I have those numbers too. Amadeus owns 43%, Sabre owns 37%, Travelport owns 20%. 3 players.
I'm on a meeting.
There's a new player right there.
This is like target practice for people. Like if we could break down these industries. Did she have something to, Matt, did she have something to add to this conversation when she's talking about consolidation?
Yeah, absolutely. She thinks she's better at cybersecurity than CDK is right now. And honestly, I don't know if
I can agree with her though. The consolidation in the toy industry is disturbing to me too as well. But
more of a complaint of lack of toys. My door's locked now. Sorry.
Or not. No, you're good. But like as we kind of look at these industries and you see that there's only maybe 2 or 3 players in an industry, they're a target. And as you look at your business and you kind of decide on what line of business software am I going to use to run my business? If you're relying on one vendor, just understand that there's a big risk there. And you really have to kind of like think about, okay, alternatives in this situation. Like we can all live without email for a few days. But can you live, like these dealers couldn't really live without their dealer management system.
Mm-hmm.
Or their employees. I mean, how long can they maintain their employees if they can't pay them?
Yeah. Well, and what's the fallout from this, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure car sales right now with the interest rates the way they are and things like that, car sales probably aren't, and I have not looked at the numbers, probably aren't the hottest they've ever been, right? So what if people just don't stop by? What if people just say, you know what, I'm just annoyed by this, I'm not going to buy a car now. And you just lost that. You lost that for however long.
Well, that's what they're looking at, is that there's only so many cars.
There was actually an article that's a blog post that CDK put out like 3 weeks ago saying prep for your busy time. Where it's here.
Yeah, summertime, right?
They couldn't. Yeah, the 4th of July weekend is apparently is one of their sales pushes.
Well, it makes sense. Husbands or wives are off together, off at the same time. Makes it easier to purchase a vehicle.
And well, on top of that too, you have prior year cars that are probably getting closed out, and they're getting ready for the new, the new model year. So people probably buy just because of that. There is another lawsuit that we didn't talk about that I just found.
Go for it.
Investors of Brookfield Business Partners who own CDK may be filing a lawsuit.
Ah.
They're investigating claims on behalf of investors.
Well, you know what, Chris? That might make this whole breach show up in the public.
Yeah. So we don't wish this on anybody. This is terrible. This is terrible. Like on so many.
I mean, what we're looking at isn't wishing them. I mean, yeah, this is scary, but what we're looking at is, okay, well, this is a lot of people who are working in professional services. They say, oh, that's car dealerships. But how many businesses? Think about your own bit.
Yeah.
For those of our listeners who are there, you have software. Whether that's UltraTax or whether in the accounting space, or you have the Westlaw in your law practice, or one of the other programs that are out there that are running all of your case management. What happens if that gets breached? And you can have the same issue that's going on here. And so, being smart is learning. Having wisdom is watching the other guy make the mistake and you applying it to your business.
Yeah, we have to
before you have that issue.
Well, the reason we talk about this stuff is to really learn from it, right? Like,
yeah,
you learn where there's good and bad in practices, and like the way that CDK is set up, hopefully will change. The way that they conduct their business, hopefully will change. We saw this with LastPass when they got hacked. We've seen this with a lot of companies. It's like you don't want them to be hacked, but they need to learn from it, and we need to apply that learning, and then hopefully other people learn from it. Like you said, to your point, is to avoid this. You want to switch gears a little bit and talk about Cozy Bear? I love the name.
I love Cozy Bear. It's
Cozy Bear? Okay. Midnight Blizzard too, but I like Cozy Bear.
My kids are a little older for stuffed animals, Chris, but tell me about this.
Well, APT-29 is boring, right? We don't want to be basic here. We want to use cool names like Cozy Bear, like Midnight Blizzard, right? Okay. TeamViewer got hacked. Corporate.
Okay. For those what's TeamViewer, Chris, for those who are not?
Remote access software. A lot of people use it to remote in their PCs. Businesses use it to remote into computers from pretty much anywhere in the world. You can do support with it. Sometimes, like, vendors will offer you support with it. They'll say, "Hey, download TeamViewer, and we'll just connect to your TeamViewer session, and we'll be able to walk you through like how to do this in the application."
Okay.
So their corporate systems got hacked. Luckily, they implement defense in depth. And for anybody out there that has not heard us mention defense in depth, it's really just a strategy where you leverage like multiple security measures to protect your assets. So if one line of defense is compromised, you have additional layers of detection and response that can exist to basically back those up to ensure that threats are stopped along the way. The idea is it's like an onion. Let's go Shrek style. Each layer, you just if it doesn't stop at the first layer, it goes to the second layer, blah, 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 all the way down. Hopefully you stop the attack, or at least you minimize the blast radius of it. So they had network segmentation, which is so important, which is something that we don't see in a lot of companies, even bigger companies. For some reason, people just don't do it. And the attack stopped in their IT network. It never got to their production network. It never got to customers' information. So it's really good in that sense, because that is a very sophisticated actor who has hacked Microsoft, who's part of the SolarWinds attack. I think they actually hacked the Democrats too back in the day.
Okay.
So like they've done some very high-profile attacks, and they got stopped. Yes, they did compromise some of their IT network, but it never got anywhere else because they had network segmentation, which is awesome. This is the type of stuff that
they were applying it correctly.
Yeah, this is the type of stuff that we love to see.
I remember when Uber got attacked, and they had segmentation, but they hacked the IT admin who had a spreadsheet on how to basically bypass all of it.
Well, there's that too.
Yeah, there's always that in there. But at least in this case, they didn't have that.
Yeah, and That's as much as we know right now.
That's a good thing.
They haven't released anything else, but it does really just highlight like why simple things are so important and why defense in depth and network segmentation. And when I talk about network segmentation, what we mean is there's the networks are segmented in a way that they can't communicate with one another. So there might be certain things that you can do across the networks, but you're really blocking it off. If you look at your home network, one of the disadvantages of a home network is everything might be on the same wireless network, which means it's on the same network. So if one device gets compromised, they can compromise other devices. When you do segmentation, they would have to be able to compromise a device in one segment and they'd be able to figure out how to get to the other segment to do another compromise. So that's why, like if you have a camera at your house, or let's say Apple TVs or Android TVs, or I don't know, Google.
Even printers.
Yeah, printers are another thing.
Printers, children with iPads, and
I was thinking about the Google streaming thing, but I
toys.
can't remember what it's called. So I just
Alexa.
full. Yeah, Google TV, I guess is what they kind of call it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It used to be Chromecast, but I think they changed the name. But anyway, you put those devices on a separate network, like a different wireless network that's completely separate from your normal network. And if they get hacked, well, for the most part, you're going to be a lot safer than you are normally. So that's what they did. Obviously, they had way more tools involved in that, but that's part of the story. But yeah, that's really good news. Matt, do you have anything do you like to talk about?
Not really. I mean, that really touches on the big point, though, is even if it's not perfect, something's better than nothing. And those devices just not being allowed to talk because they don't need to talk is huge. Frankly, if you've ever scanned traffic that comes from one of these Fire TVs, like the one I just bought, I don't know what it's doing. I don't know why it's doing. I don't know where it's talking to, but I like watching Netflix on it. So to me, it's pretty simple. It can hit the internet, but nothing else, but it's up to something.
Dude.
I don't trust it.
Buy the cheapest Chinese knockoff Wi-Fi camera you can buy on Amazon and scan the
They
traffic.
just talk. They're a bunch of random data, right? They're doing something.
It's wild.
The camera's probably built into the TV that Matt just installed.
True. That's true.
So it's just watching.
Where's my tape?
I have one more, and this is we've talked about insurance before. Typically, the way insurance works is the more revenue you have, the more risk you pose. So they basically apply different restrictions to people. And some of the news out there has been that cyber insurance is coming down in price. The problem is that that's not always true. Like certain industries are getting rising premiums, but the real problem is the policies are becoming highly restrictive, almost to a point where it is very expensive for all of the things you need to implement to get a policy. And I'll share this story about one of my customers. They're in the manufacturing industry, which has been hit by a lot of ransomware over the years and just hacking attempts in general, hacking incidents, cyber incidents in general. And they went to get cyber insurance. Now, typically at 50 million, different insurers will apply different policies. They'll say you have to have way more multi-factor authentication. If you use any admin accounts at all, you have to have multi-factor authentication on them. Maybe they can't do other certain things too. This company's not nowhere near 50 million. And they got hit with all these. And it goes further. Administrative accounts or privileged accounts aren't allowed to browse the internet as part of this policy. So it's got to the point now where, so if you want to install a piece of software for them, you have to have a standard user download it, and you have to do multi-factor authentication to elevate that privilege to allow the software to be installed. And then once that's done, that privilege is over. Nobody can be an admin, and if you're an administrator, you cannot browse the internet. And that the only time you're allowed to access the internet is if you have to use a cloud service. That's part of their policy, and they're nowhere near 50 million.
So insurance is getting cheaper.
If you can get it.
But
If you
get
can
it.
get it.
If you can get it, and if you can maintain it.
Yep.
by doing these things.
To give you another example, we negotiated with the insurance company, which a lot of people don't know you can do. We helped them. We told them what we were doing, and they went back to the insurance company. And then they went back to the underwriters, their insurance broker, and the broker went back to the underwriters and got answers for us. Like they look, we wrote out what we're doing. They responded, and we have to do a couple of other things. But they have 60 days. They gave them a provisional insurance policy that we have to have these certain things done in 60 days. So if you haven't negotiated, if you haven't told your insurance broker and had them go back to the underwriters to make sure that you're doing the things that you say you're doing, and that everything, and having them put it in writing that this is what we're doing, is this okay? You might want to think about that. And this took us. The weird thing with this is we're going back to the client, who's then going back to the insurance agent, which is going back to the underwriter. So this is like this big roundabout. But yeah, it was interesting from that perspective. But again, this is a company that's not even close to 50 million, and it's kind of crazy.
Chris,
Contracts
yeah,
can be negotiated. Anyway, guys.
I wanted to get 1 second really with Chris's point. When you were talking about, and I'm sorry for going along, but I thought it was important. Chris, when you're saying an administrative account can't browse the internet, what does that mean to the client that has this restriction put into their policy? How do you solve for that? What does that look like, or is that for next week?
There's a few things you can do. I think this is a bigger conversation. Probably not even next week. We're still strategizing a couple things, and we're trying to get clarification on one thing from the insurance company. So I don't have all the answers. But what we're going to probably do is block browsers from even being used by administrators, and we're going to apply web filtering and things like that based off of like accounts that are in the administrative group. We're just going to block them.
Okay.
So
I can't wait till the week after next for that.
All right, well, we got 60 days to apply some of this stuff, so it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be a fun ride.
The thing is, I think the thing here to remember is, okay, so to comply with this, it's going to cost money. It's not free.
It's not free, and now we're getting to a point where, realistically, if you're not doing a compliance program in your business for just insurance, like days of that are over. You need to have a compliance program to do insurance. You need to be looking at standards and frameworks to apply to your business that are going to meet these requirements by the insurance company, and it's going to make us all safer at the end of the day. Some of them are kind of ridiculous, but some of them aren't. This one specifically for not being able to, unless it's used for a cloud environment, not be able to access email is not a big deal, but no access to the internet, that's interesting to me. So on servers, it's easier. It's harder on workstations that might leave the network, because behind a firewall, it's really easy to block certain things from getting the internet, right?
So yeah, but what happens if what type of we could go deeper, but what type of admin account is it? Like if you're working inside of a SaaS application,
that's allowed because it's a cloud environment. What's not allowed is like a local administrator on a PC or server. Like those are not allowed to browse the internet.
Not on the endpoints.
They can't access. Yep, they can't access email. They can't browse the internet. Administrative accounts for cloud environments are required because you have to access the internet to get to the cloud, right? Like there's no right.
But just discussing this talks about how much complexity is in this.
Well, and it changes the way that we have to service them too, right?
Yeah.
So if you're doing IT and you can't go and download things as an administrator, you have to have a standard account to go download things from, and then you have to elevate them with administrative privileges. So it complicates it, extends it out. It is good practice. It's just for a company as small as they are, which I'm not going to say the revenue. It's a pretty big change from an insurance company for this small revenue compared to like 50 million. That's all I'm going to say.
And Chris, how big was that policy? Was it 5 million, 2 million?
I think 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's relatively.
It's between 1 and 2. It's not that big of a policy, no.
No, that's quite a lot to do for a relatively small policy.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we got a whole of ideas for other weeks now.
Yeah.
Something about cybersecurity insurance I've got written down here, and
Got to be compliant with it.
how to be compliant with your cyber insurance. Did anyone even know there was some compliance? Anyway, Matt, any parting comments for us?
No, you guys talked a lot. I'm not adding to it. No,
I think Matt
there's,
needs to work on his physical security before we start this.
Yeah, I know. I had a couple breaches today,
Yeah, I can see it.
and I had
You got
my
to
camera away
monitor
from my
for below.
cat.
You got to monitor for items smaller than 4 feet tall.
Carly, anything?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit today.
Yeah.
Mr. Chris, I know you always got something. Why don't you just say goodbye and we'll move on?
Stay tuned for next week when we're going to talk about the most viral video on TikTok. I'm just kidding. Have a good rest of your week, guys.
Take
Stay
care,
off
guys.
TikTok, Chris.